Hello there, Steve here in Sydney of the late Gnosis website truebluehealer.com. I'd just like to bring to your attention something very valuable that Victor Zammit did recently. He put out a little piece in his weekly emails to the effect that it's about time we called out all these skeptics on their much chanted slogan, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, you see. It's actually not true. It's sourced back to an English philosopher called David Hume, and it's not really true at all. Lawyers do study, Victor Zammit has studied, lawyers do study rules of evidence. It's quite a thick book, by the way, and there's no chapter in the book that says extraordinary evidence requirements. This is for special paranormal claims only. That's not in the legal textbook called Rules of Evidence, okay? Once again, Victor Zammit, the Supreme Court lawyer, teaches us how to think deductively, legally, to get decisions and outcomes that will be upheld by the rule of law. And one of them is you have a body of evidence and you have to prove that it's fraudulent or won't hold up to debate. You have to rip to pieces somehow, right? That means your claim that it's fraudulent has got to be upheld. And then the body of evidence loses credibility. Now, he's posted 7 years of evidence, 5 days a week, where deceased people who can verify their identity appear in a closed, locked room while a medium is strapped down, grown out of ectoplasm. The person exists for about 15 minutes. Victor Zammit describes this. There's three particular manifestations done by medium David Thompson. They are below this video linked. And there's another piece from H. Pan Woe and Ben Emlyn Jones in Oxford talking about the surprise abilities of Helen Duncan, how she predicted and did know when ships were sinking during World War II before the Admiralty knew. Okay, before it was in the newspapers, before it was in the media, she actually had sailors appearing. The undisciplined and thoughtlessly based claims of fraud that skeptics throw at everything they don't like actually is self-checkmating as far as I can tell, and there's a very simple long historical record that checkmates this claim. I just went through what Victor Zammit is telling you, that for 7 years he's been witnessing these physical mediumship manifestations of deceased persons appearing and identifying themselves to random people in the audience in a closed, locked room, okay? And they do it by voice tone, vocal mannerisms, intimate knowledge that was never written down, that sort of thing. And you can never predict who's going to turn up for the random sitters, because not everyone gets an appearance. It doesn't work that way. So it's very hard to duplicate this. Now, here's the part that ruins the claim, whacks the claim out of the stadium made by the skeptics, that it's all just fraud and you've got to prove it's not fraud. It's already been proven not to be fraud for 150 years, which is the time that these physical manifestations have been recorded, since Victorian times. Now, for 150 years, no magician has ever duplicated these amazing feats on stage in any stage act. James Randi hasn't done it. No other magician has done it for 150 years. Do remember, Randi-type magicians specialise in doing professional fraud to delight and amaze us. And no one has ever got a random person out of the audience at a magician's show on stage and made a deceased grandparent appear in front of them and identify themselves with intimate family details that were never written down. No magician has ever done this. And I want you to think about that. It's one thing that Victor Zammit's claiming that can't be duplicated by fraud. I know that fraud can be duplicated by almost anybody with enough practice, but this genuine natural phenomenon, I'm choosing to call it that because it cannot be duplicated by magicians who are professional fraudsters. In 150 years they have failed to duplicate physical manifestation of deceased strangers, grandparents, strangers to the audience. So here again, I'll play the little Victor Zammit challenge to skeptics to actually give them some extraordinary evidence to test out whether they really believe in their much chanted, much vaunted claim that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but in fact it's not really true. And we're giving them some evidence which is, by all normal standards of normalcy, is extraordinary. That is, physical evidence of life after death. Okay, and it's been repeated every day, 5 days a week at least, in Victor Zammit's presence for about 7 years through the medium David Thompson. Now, just going to put Victor Zammit's little question to you with the robot read thing, and then I'll come back to you.
Victor Zammit reports on loud skeptic slogan right here on paranormal and the afterlife evidence that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. This is what skeptics keep saying, but why is it that no skeptic will discuss the extraordinary evidence? My expertise in the admissibility of evidence tells me exactly what evidence to present. If the evidence is objective and repeatable, that in itself will be extraordinary evidence. For 7 years I witnessed stunning afterlife evidence, materializations, and these are objective and repeatable. Each time we have a session we end up, for some 15 minutes, with an extra solid human being in the room. He tells us he materialized from the afterlife dimension. That is extraordinary evidence. That kind of repeatable extraordinary evidence tears the daylights out of skeptics, because the extraordinary evidence shows in very clear terms that the skeptic's beliefs are all wrong. I say it again, that there are some very serious psychological problems. Why skeptics cannot see the paranormal with scientific balance. Thank you, Victor, and can I add that Victor's final statement there, in red, about skeptics' serious psychological problems follows his viewing of my skeptics are ultra-hypnotic, looking for a hypnotist, like James Randi, a recent video, and the surprise independent finding about how skeptics are made, in childhood, in the Logan School in Queensland. And I repeat Victor's challenge, why don't skeptics discuss extraordinary evidence, such as physical mediumship materializations? I have seen them myself. They call the boxes of normal physical reality. So why won't any skeptic discuss this repeating scientific phenomenon? One answer would be, the slogan is pure empty rhetoric, as well as being a deception, where the skeptic means, really, that he will believe no evidence whatsoever, that he is just practicing his usual eternal non-belief, in the form of infantile contrarianism, such as, that's not evidence. One skeptic, YouTuber Hazel, insists mistakenly, falsely, that Zammit claims 7 years experience witnessing physical appearances of deceased people is just another one of those many frauds, such as the skeptic's total overinvestment in fraud to avoid extraordinary evidence. The truth is, physical manifestations of deceased loved ones who verify their identity of random volunteers from a magician's audience has never been duplicated by fraud on stage by any magician in 150 years, including Dunning or James Randi, Houdini, etc. But Zammit's claim is in a different category altogether, unduplicated by tricksters. For 7 years, at least. If Zammit were a mere magician, his trick would have been duplicated by now, by magicians, and be a carnival regular. But it's not.
So there you've got Victor's challenge, wanting them to, we're trying to find out whether they really believe their extraordinary claims thing, or whether it's just meaningless rhetoric to avoid talking about something, and that seems to be the case. The thing that checkmates all the skeptics' claims of extraordinary evidence, blah blah blah, and fraud, is that what Victor Zammit's telling us, and I've been in these seances myself, I've seen the procedures, I've seen the things happening, and you can go yourself, dear skeptics, you can apply to being one of these events and find out for yourself. Personal experience is a very profound thing. And you can see these people appearing in low red light, that sort of thing. And I would say fraud is easily copied, and if Victor Zammit is just simply the world's greatest magician, then he should be able to have his magic feat duplicated by an on-stage magician such as James Randi. So let's assume the worst possible case. Victor Zammit is just a really good magician. Somebody else should be able to duplicate his magic on stage, and it has not been duplicated in 150 years. Are you with me on that? No magician's ever been able to get a volunteer out of the audience and make their deceased grandparents appear in front of them in full view of everybody else. So keep them there for 15 minutes and have them verify their identity with vocal mannerisms, accent and local knowledge, intimate knowledge of the volunteer out of the audience. No magician has ever done that in 150 years, which means the fraud's not possible. The fraud can't be done, which leaves what Victor Zammit is telling you as most likely true, for want of a better explanation. I'll let you go with that, skeptics.